All right, it's 101.
It's 101. You ready to get started?
Let's get started.
All right, hopefully you all ready to get started. So let's start just by telling you who we are. Right, so I'm BJ Armstrong. I'm the operating principal of Keller Williams Realty. There's several Keller Williams agents on here, so thanks for coming and joining us. This is Megan Sargent, our team leader and managing broker right here at Keller Williams Revolution. If you haven't noticed over the last several months, probably, we're seeing a whole lot of volatility in, let's just say, the economy, right? It shows up in the news all over the place. It shows up in just general commentary, right? And so that does a couple of things. It gets a lot of us scratching our heads a little bit about what's in the future, right? Maybe it puts us into a state of fear. Maybe it puts us into just a general panic over what's going to happen, right? So, but we've been noticing this trend for quite a while, and we really decided that it's probably time to do something about it. And what do we do about it? We go and take a really good, close look at reality. What's the reality of our market? What are the numbers behind it that support it, right? So take the emotion out of the conversation and go, this is where we are.
So one of our goals for today is to make each of you the local economist, the person that your sphere goes to for any information pertaining to real estate. And oftentimes as realtors, when we look at stats, we're looking at how many listings were taken, how many contracts were written. And those are really lag effects of what's been happening economically for months. And so we really want to go to the leading indicators of what's going to affect the market in the next 12 months, hopefully, and equip you guys to start watching for things to shift so that as you're talking to people in your world, you are the one that knows what's going on with our local.
This is about equipping you to lead your client.
Guys, I got a comment that said that you did you guys mute yourself?
I didn't mute myself. You can't hear me? Who said no?
Oh, I can hear you.
It's working now?
Can you hear us?
One person said they couldn't hear us sound. That might have been a person.
Okay.
That's all right.
Okay. As long as
We call that a picnic.
we're good. Okay.
I get two laughs. Greg Tietz has no idea what picnic means. If you want to stay to the very end, I'll explain to you what picnic means.
Yeah.
But.
All the dad jokes for DJ.
All right, anyway, we want to equip you to lead your client, right? First and foremost, how do we get buyers and sellers exactly where they need to go? Remember that this is about looking 12 months out. And so what are the conversations you need to have today in order to be ready for that?
Our other goal is to kind of reignite your love for this business. I think the last 2 years have given us a little bit of maybe exhaustion, a little bit of fatigue, and some of us have kind of lost that love for real estate. And then we think about a shifting market and you're like, oh my gosh, I've been running ragged for 2 years and now you're going to tell me it's going to get harder or a different kind of hard. And what we want you to take away from today is that there are more opportunities in real estate than there ever has been. So don't take today's conversation as something negative or scary. Take this as an opportunity to change some things in your business to really take market share over the next 1 to 2 years.
And I think that's where when we start to experience fear and anxiety around what's going on in the marketplace, we don't recognize that as opportunities. But oftentimes when that shows up in our world, there's an opportunity around it if we just look at it the right way. So hopefully, we're going to give you some stuff to look at and think about that will give you a picture of that opportunity. Whether or not you choose to do anything with it is up to you.
Yep. This does not like for me to click with this.
All right, so let's start with looking at the numbers that drive U.S. real estate, right? And so we're going to look at a few things specifically: home sales, home prices, inventory, mortgage rates, and affordability. These are probably nothing new to you. In fact, you probably have some general ideas of where these shake out already. But specifically, this is a national picture of where home sales have been since 1990, so for the last 22 years.
So as you look at 2002 to 2006, you look at that 5-year period and you can see that we sold 28.2 million homes, which is absolutely insane. And you look at the last 5 years, 2018 to 2022, and we have sold the same record number of homes. So economists start to look at that and go, okay, when it happened in 2002 to 2006, we followed that with anybody that was in the business in 07, 08, 9, 10, you felt the recession after that. And so they start to ask, is this an indicator that a shift is going to come because this level of home sales is not sustainable? And so are we going to see the downturn that we saw last time? And that's where you start to hear a shift is coming, things are going to slow down. It's because our sales are hitting those record numbers that they did in that 5-year period.
Right, and so a couple things we want to look at. Megan says, is this sustainable? So we want to look at some factors that are going to influence this sustainability. So I don't know. Nationally, I think it's pretty clear that it's probably not sustainable. Locally, that picture may look a little bit different. So a little bit farther into our conversation, we're gonna have the conversation about the sustainability and what's going to affect those demand factors.
So let's look at this locally. So these are home sales in Central Illinois. So I ran Champaign, Mira, Capital, and Peoria associations. So I ran all of the counties in those associations and looked at what home sales in Central Illinois were doing. So you can see from this graph, the last 2 years, now we can only go back to 2009, that's as far as our MLS data goes back, but you can see in the last 2 years, those really record high numbers. We didn't quite see those highs in Central Illinois that we saw nationally in 2019 and 2020. But if you, I don't want to get ahead of myself. So there's a chance that we may not see the decline as fast as the rest of the country. Maybe we have another year or so of good sales numbers before we start to see
I think it's a good indicator. You even look back at 09 and 10 and 2010, those were our peak years. Right, so you remember nationally that economy was 07, 08, 09. Right, so we definitely lag a couple of years. Does that mean that we've got a couple of years still yet ahead of us? Maybe. Again, remember, there's a whole lot of influences going on right now that weren't really even present in 08, 09 that we'll be dealing with. But something else that's interesting about this, right, is that we've sold more homes in the last 2 years than really ever in Central Illinois, despite what we keep calling no inventory.
And in order to sell a record number of homes, we have to have a record number of listings. So one of the things that we're going to challenge in today's conversation is this thought that we have no inventory. We do have inventory. We don't have an inventory problem. We have a days on market problem.
It's just selling so fast.
We have a demand problem, right? So in order to sell these record numbers, we have to have the listings. So we need to change the script a little bit that we have an inventory problem.
Absolutely.
We have a demand problem.
Yeah, meaning too many people want the houses that are out there.
Right.
So yes, if we had more inventory, we could sell more houses.
Correct.
Or at least, yeah.
Or would we?
Or would we, is exactly right.
These are home prices. So as you look at, this is nationally, so you can see in that 02 to 06 window that we were talking about, how fast home prices, home values were increasing. The long-term average, we looked to about 3 to 4% inflation. So we want home values to increase about 3 to 4% per year just to keep up with inflation. And so that's that yellow line that you see. Now, when you look at that 2002 to 2006 window, you can see home prices just climbed massively above that. And you can see that we're repeating that in 2021 and 2022. So they also look at that and say, okay, can we sustain this growth in home values? Obviously, the answer is no. We can't continue to outpace that 3 to 4% mark long term. At some point, it has to come back down.
And I think what's interesting, if you take that average as a 4%, right? So that's kind of a golden average over the last 30 years. The last couple of years have been really steep increases. So we're talking 15 and 20% increases in prices over the last couple of years. That level of change is absolutely unsustainable. So if nothing else, we're going to see more stabilization in it. So the market's going to get weird because it's going to feel like it's not growing as fast because prices are going to plateau or they're going to stabilize. That'll cause its own sort of panic.
It will, but what we're watching for is we don't believe right now, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, but we don't believe prices are going to go back down. So there's nothing indicating right now that the client that bought now, some people may have overbought in this market. I can't say this across the board, but for the vast majority, it doesn't mean that what you sold at 10% or 20% over list price means that they're going to be upside down on it in
Correct.
5 years.
There are no indicators right now that say prices in real estate are going to go down, right? If you look back to 07, 08, this is the mortgage crisis, right? So the big tipper in those years was that mortgage crisis brought all that stuff down and just destroyed the market. Now, there are some factors that could destroy our market. They're not present today. So we're not overly worried about it. I do see that, right, with what the Fed's doing and just with the economic conditions overall, again, I see some opportunities to stabilize, meaning.
And they want that. They're intentionally doing things to stabilize the market because this is not sustainable.
We may see 0% growth over the next couple of years, right? So in price growth, not negative, but zero. This is a really weird slide, and I apologize for the way that it came out, but it's the only way I could pack all this data in there. The first data in there is 2006, and the latest one is, this goes to like October of 21. So it's pretty much up to date. Here's what it is. The greens are closed sales, so that's how many houses sold. The blues are listings taken. And what I wanted to get to is you can see in those early years how tightly packed listings taken and closed sales were. And you can see in the late years how tightly packed listings taken and closed sales were. And what happened in this middle, right? This is the inventory conversation that everybody's talking about. In those middle years, we're so used to having all of that inventory. That's what we don't have today. That's the thing that's creating days on market, right? So go ahead.
If you think of this in terms of a buyer or a seller's market, when those two lines are touching each other, we're in a seller's market. Everything that's coming on the market is selling. Everything in the middle where you see that gap between the two lines, that's our inventory gap. That's your days on market. Like I said, that's where we're in more of a buyer's market. And if you can't see this, but right on the left side where the two lines start to separate, that was 2010 for Central Illinois. So when the recession happened nationally, they started feeling it. The housing market started to feel it nationally in late 08 and definitely in 09. Central Illinois did not feel it until 2010.
Here's what's interesting about that too, right? And I can only speak for Bloomington because in 2010, Bloomington was the only market I was involved in. But in 2010 is about the time that we had a major local employer starting to say, hey, we're going to make some changes in the way that we do our business. And they started to move some people out, right? So we didn't really experience it until we started to get some pretty significant employment shift around here.
Yep. I know, that's why I'm clicking. So these are home prices in McLean County, Sangamon County, Champaign County, and Peoria County. Oh, McLean, Tazewell, Sangamon, and Peoria. So this shows you what our home prices did from 2009 to 2022. So you can see our home prices increased not quite the way that the trend line looked nationally. You can see that in Central Illinois, our home values stayed pretty flat from 2009 to 2018, 19. Really just in our COVID years did home values increase. We did not see that 3 to 4% increase in most markets that they saw nationally. So I think one of the arguments that you could have about our home prices that are increasing sometimes 18 to 20% right now, we needed that because we were behind the rest of the country in those home values coming back up from the recession, the last recession we had.
I want to throw a little caution around this conversation about average prices. This is true nationally, and this is true locally as well. But when we start looking at averages, we're taking all of the houses that sold and dividing it by the number of houses that sold, right? And that's not necessarily the best indicator, because think about the last couple of years in our Central Illinois markets. We've seen more $1 million or more houses sell honestly, just in the last 6 months than I've seen in the last 10 years. So that skews this number pretty drastically. Now, that's a good thing, and I'm okay with it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that your $150,000 house is experiencing the same shift. So just keep that in mind. Real estate is a local business, meaning it's local in terms of your own economy, but it's also local in terms of what price point are you looking at, what neighborhood are you looking at. All of those are factors in how you're going to lead your client.
Yep. This shows nationally what inventory did since 1999, and you see that dotted line is 6 months of inventory, and the reason for that is that's what we call a balanced market. So we talk about being in a buyer's market or in a seller's market, and our best gauge of that is how much inventory do we have. So that means if another house did not hit the market, if all listings stopped right now, how long would it take us to sell out of everything? And so right now, nationally, we have about 2.3 months of inventory. And you can see that we didn't even get that low in inventory back in those crazy 2002 to 2006 years. We never got this low in inventory.
Yeah, I think another interesting thing about this graph is how quickly it changes.
Right.
So if you look nationally at 2.3 months inventory, I can rest assured, right, that I'm going to be in a seller's market for a long time because it's going to take a long time to build up 6 months inventory. Not really.
Look at the difference between 2011 and 2012.
Right.
We went from 8.3 to 5.9. So we pretty quickly, and look how quickly you pass through that balanced market.
Yeah.
You're never really in a balanced market. You pass through that very briefly, and we spend, other than those 2006 and 2012, we don't spend a lot of time around that 6 month mark. We really do operate in either a buyer's market or a seller's market. We don't spend a lot of time in that balanced market.
The important thing about this is, what do we need to be doing right now with our clients in order to lead them into the next phase? Because if we do experience something that happens that moves our demand a lot, we can no longer have the, hey, we're going to have multiple offers on Sunday and let's just wait and collect all offers until noon or whatever, right?
Yep. Here's inventory, the same in these 4 counties.
So you can see that that we're well under 2 months inventory in all 4 counties, right? So, and this is no surprise to any agent on this call, right? We've all felt this for a long time. The real question is it going to stay at these low levels? No predictions from you?
No, it's not. I mean, we're going to get into what factors we're looking at, but I mean, the short answer, no, it's not going to stay
Well, I
here.
appreciate her withholding the emotional answer and waiting until
He'll
we
get way
get to
ahead
the
of me on
factors of
slides
demand.
if I don't shut it down. We're not there yet. First, we're going to talk about, well, one of the factors we are going to talk about is mortgage rates.
Yeah, because we all know that mortgage rates have been going up, and in fact, this is the end of 2021 at 2.96. We all know that they're into the 5s today.
And if you are an agent that got into the business during COVID, you don't know what it's like to be in a market with interest rates even at 5% like we are. So you may have clients going, oh my gosh, or first-time homebuyer that's now going to move up. It says, oh my gosh, my first mortgage was at 2.5%. I can't imagine borrowing money at 5% or 6%. Yeah. Well, look at the average from 1990 to 2020 is 5.97. Before that, 72 to 2020, it's 7.8. And another thing I want to look at in this is look how fast they can change. The Fed is meeting this week, I think the 15th on Wednesday, and we expect them to increase rates. But everybody says, oh, well, we're not going to get to 6% this year. We're not going to get to 7% this year. Gary Keller's predicting we're going to end the year somewhere around 8%. The Fed has said that they're going to meet at least 3 to 5 more times before the end of the year, and we predict that every time they meet, they'll increase rates.
I think we're going to get there pretty quickly. If you look at 2 things, so yeah, the rate increase this week, which is pretty much all the analysts are pretty much saying it's probably going to be 0.5%. Could be as much as 3/4, but probably 1/2. But there's something else that the Fed's doing that doesn't show up on these tables that do affect the mortgage rate. One of them is called qualitative easing. Right, so qualitative easing is the number of mortgages or mortgage-backed securities that the Fed is buying from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Right, so when they guarantee those, they sell those loans off to private investors. Well, the biggest investor is the federal government until they're not. And so one of the ways that they can influence their interest rate is buy fewer of those mortgages, and then the private investors that are out there buying those mortgages are going to demand higher rates for them. So that's where you see these interest rates go up. So I have no hesitation in saying that we're going to see an 8% rate. In fact, I think we'll probably see some 6s and 7s in the next 60 or 90 days.
What your clients are going to see is as the Fed tightens up, they're going to make it a little bit harder for your clients to get loans. So you explain to your clients, or your lender explains to their client, that after they close, their loan is sold to Fannie or Freddie, and they're going to get this letter, and this is who's going to service your loan. That's really all they care about. But what we're going to see is we're going to see the need for higher credit scores, higher income. They're going to require higher down payments. They're going to tighten up the lending, what lenders need to give money, and it's going to make first-time home buyers, anybody that needs a VA, an FHA, an RD, any of those loan programs, or they're going to tighten all of that up, and it's going to make it especially hard for first-time home buyers to compete. And they think it's hard now. Add tight lending restrictions,
Can I
and
make,
make it harder.
can I make a side note here?
Sure.
Because as this happens, as you hear Megan talking about first-time buyers being frozen out of the market and doing all that stuff, what do you think of as an investor? If you have or have clients that are represented, if you represent investors in this market, what do you think happens to the rental market? As those low-income buyers go away, they become renters. So in the near term, in fact, when I'm saying near term, this is probably over a 5-year period, I think you're going to see that rental market continue, right? So the demand for the rental market's going to get crazier.
Yeah,
It's already,
I was gonna say,
it's already stupid.
crazy. Yeah, but this is something to watch and something to keep in touch with your lender contacts and make sure you keep a pulse on when these restrictions start to tighten.
Yeah.
Because there are clients right now that are pre-approved for a mortgage that in 60 or 90 days or 6 months from now, not only are they going to qualify for less of a mortgage, but they may have slipped out of the credit requirement.
And I think we have that on a slide coming up.
Nope.
We lost one.
Are you-
That's all right.
Yeah, I might have got rid of that one.
No, yeah, so there is, she's talking about this pre-qual, it is absolutely important that we go back and get our clients pre-approved, because
No, that one that you're looking for is coming up.
that's coming up, all right, sorry. Sheesh.
Slow down.
I did get ahead of you.
Okay. Go through this first.
Let's talk a little bit about the factors that are going to affect this demand, right? Because you look at it nationally, and you say, hey, what is happening? We all know that inflation's out there. The stated number is somewhere around 5%. The real number is probably closer to 12% by the time you add in food and gas, right? And we all know, right? Who's not spending $100 a week all of a sudden filling up their car, right? Every agent that's driving buyers around is doing it. But inflation's a real thing right now. So that's gonna eat into everybody's pocketbook, and it gets back into that kind of affordability component, right? Today, everybody has enough savings to weather it, right? I go fill up my gas and I go, yeah, that sucks, but you know what? I still got money in the bank.
And economists predicted that inflation would sort of correct itself this year through things like increasing rates a little bit. They thought that spending would come back down, and then like the war on Ukraine happened, and we have all of these supply chain issues where, I bought a car this year and there's like 3 computer chips that are not in my car, so I don't have heated seats right now. And it's because of this supply chain issue, but I still paid over MSRP for my car because we couldn't find another one.
Yep.
And so it didn't stop me from spending because of these supply chain issues, but it did cause the vehicles to cost more because now I have to bring it back in and they're going to have to put the chip in. And so we saw this increased price, but there was such a demand for it
Absolutely.
that they were still selling. And so they expected supply chain issues to correct themselves, and that would help the cost of some of the things that we pay for. Well, now you start throwing resources at things like a war, and your supply chain issues are now going to continue because resources are being used differently, and the whole world is interacting differently. We look at gas prices right now. So
Well, political unrest is a whole new thing, right? So when we look at demand specifically and a war on Ukraine, it's pretty easy for me to go, hey, I saw it on the news last night, but today I'm back up about my job. I'm not worrying about it until I have to, right? So if that escalates at all, that's going to potentially create some significant demand changes, right? Because the bigger that gets, the more people are gonna tighten up. So I'm not making any predictions on that. I'm just saying keep an eye on it because it will affect our demand at some point.
it will. The other thing that happened, if you haven't heard the term the Great Resignation, this refers to all of the people that either changed jobs or got out of the workforce in 2020. So 47 million people in 2021. 47 million people in 2021 either got out of the workforce or changed jobs. And that is massive compared to what that number usually is. Part of that is because in 2020, when COVID hit, everybody panicked. And anybody that was thinking about changing jobs didn't. They just kind of stayed put to figure out what was going to happen to the world. And so we created this bottleneck of people unhappy in their jobs. And then when 2021 came and everybody was a little bit more used to COVID and a little bit more used to how the world was operating, they decided, okay, now I'm going to quit my job or change my job or whatever. And so some of those people have come back to the workforce, some of them have not. And so you couple that with the incredible amount of spending we're doing as Americans right now, and it just brings a lot of unrest to how long this can go on. How long can we continue to increase inflation when our wages are not increasing at the level we're spending? So where we looked at our bank accounts and said, we didn't spend any money during COVID, so I'm going to take that trip. Oh my gosh, that trip cost me $3,000 more than I thought it would. Let's take it anyways because we didn't take a trip during COVID. It hasn't, just because things have become more expensive, it hasn't stopped us from spending. And we can't hit on that enough, that is a big thing that's driving raising rates and
that's the whole coming out of COVID, right? Nobody really knows what this new economy is going to look like.
Are we all going to slow down and start making better decisions?
Yeah, so today we're all in this spot of all spending, and is that going to change next month? I'm going to tell you this. It's going to change, not because I want it to. It's going to change because I'm forced to, because I'm spending more money on gas, more money on food, more money on my mortgage. Taxes are going to go up, all the stuff.
And how many of you sold houses in the last 12 months where people put down far more money? There's far more cash in the market right now. They're covering appraisal gaps. They're putting down larger down payments to be more competitive. So there's a chance maybe some people have spent their nest egg, spent their savings, and maybe that's going to draw back spending. So there's just been a lot more spending in circulation, but you've seen it in the real estate market just in how people have
Absolutely
written competitive offers.
Let's talk about this as it gets into Central Illinois specifically, right? So those are the things that are going to affect us nationally in terms of demand. As we look specifically into Central Illinois, think about these three things. Think about the employment base, right? So the employment base in Central Illinois, we already know has been more stable than some of the others. And when we look at the lag, we talked about the lag, how we're kind of behind what happens nationally. When you look at our numbers, our sales numbers, they didn't really change until about two things happened. We watched it in Bloomington when State Farm specifically made the announcement and said, hey, we're going to diversify the workforce a little bit in Bloomington. And they moved some folks out. That changed our market pretty significantly. Caterpillar did it in Peoria. They moved their headquarters. They took some people out of Peoria and it changed their market pretty significantly.
And the reason it's important to look at this in each market kind of independently is when you take what State Farm or Caterpillar did and you move that up to Chicago, it doesn't have the effect that it has because your population is so much greater that it's a little bit more of a drop in the bucket when an employer does something like that. But when you're talking about a community in Central Illinois where that is such a large piece of our employment base, it has a much more drastic effect. So that's why we do operate a little bit different because we're a smaller community and we're so much more affected by those large employers. Each community has 2 or 3 large employers that are going to drive that for us.
So my prediction on Central Illinois, what's going to happen to our demand over the next 12 or 20 months, starts with that employment number. And when you look at the employment bases of all of Central Illinois, you look at new companies like Rivian. You look at Flower Candy that's coming to Bloomington, that's expanding their stuff in Bloomington. You look at what's going on employment-wise at Caterpillar, what's happening in the commodities market. That's who's driving their business. It's a growth business right now, right? So those are very positive indicators that would say, hey, employment's going to be strong. Jobs are going to stay here. This is very, very stable environment, if not growing.
One little bit of unknown that we have coming out of COVID is how many people are going to stay in Central Illinois and work virtually for companies? You know, I have a couple of friends that took jobs with Amazon or Google or Apple that are based out of the Pacific Northwest, but they're working virtually here. And so we're going to see a lot more of that as well. Like you see employers all over hiring, and unfortunately, they don't have the ability right now to just dictate, hey, you're in the office Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. We all know people especially at State Farm and Caterpillar, they're like, we're going back once a week. No, we're not. We're going back twice a month. No, we're not. Employers are having a really hard time bringing people back because it's hard enough to hire, and then you have people that are like, hey, I want to work virtually. I want to be able to be home. So that's going to change. That's going to change a lot, whether people are maybe living in Texas and want to come back here to be closer to family, and they can work virtually. We're going to see that both ways. You're going to have people that live here that are like, hey, I can finally move to the beach.
Well, I think
we don't know what that's going to look like.
I think that's why we want to keep an eye on that population, right? So employment, I would say, is going to be strong and stable in Central Illinois. Population-wise, gets a little more dicey. If you look at the census data from 2020, which is the last population data that we have, we've seen a decline in the state of Illinois, significant decline.
In all 4 markets.
And we've seen a decline in all 4 markets, meaning the previous 10 years, from 2010 to 2020, we were net negative in population. That's not good for real estate demand.
Right.
I don't know what that is now. There are no current stats to tell us that. So we almost have to wait 10 more years, other than the fact that we can feel it, right? So I know that Rivian's created about 3,000 jobs in the last 3 years or so, right? I know that Farrar's created some jobs and some of that. So we're kind of interpolating some of this population data. What we want to be careful of and keep an eye on is, what are retirees doing? Are they staying here, or are they moving to Florida? We've all had clients that have moved, right? And we've had a few that have stayed. So I don't know how to parse those, other than the fact that we need our eye on it.
Another great indicator is like what's happening in our schools. Are our class sizes getting bigger? Are they getting smaller? Are families choosing to live here? Or is our school district, are the number of kids in our schools getting smaller, meaning that people are moving out? There are some things, without having formal census data, that we can keep an eye on to watch whether people are moving in or out.
So for what it's worth, I haven't heard of any new school announcements, right? I used to hear those all the time. You remember 20 years ago when they talk about, oh, they need another grade school?
Yeah.
I haven't heard that for a really long time.
We're also not closing any schools.
So that would give me a little bit of pause to be overly optimistic about what Central Illinois is going to do. And again, it points to me as stability. I don't feel it reducing, but I don't feel it growing wildly either. So I'm just going towards stability. Prices. We've all seen prices go up and up and up and up, right? So outside of inflation, just in general, gas prices and that, your housing prices are going up.
I want to reiterate that something unique to Central Illinois is we just didn't get the price increases, the increase in values that the rest of the country saw, that 3 to 4% curve that you saw. You saw our graph and it was flat up until the last 2 years, relatively. And so where we saw this huge spike that looks even more drastic than the rest of the country, we needed some of that to catch up to where the rest of the country was. So I don't want to look at that as something scary or something that is going to turn into a bubble that's going to pop. I think we needed it here. And the fact that our population and our employment have been stable the last 2 years have allowed us to increase prices the way that we did in a kind of stable way.
And this is where my prediction of prices are going to stabilize over the next 12 months. I think the days of those multiple offers and 20% over list price are going to disappear. I think they have to, partly because where prices are at. But remember, there's mortgage pressure on those prices now. So those buyers, unless you can convince your $200,000 buyer to just go buy a $180,000 house, that's going to get tricky.
Right.
So those prices are going to stabilize because of mortgages.
And what you're going to see is you have 12 months easily of comparables now. So you're going to price your listings based on the data. You're just going to, as that demand that you're talking about decreases, you're just going to see an increase in days on market. So we have to start working that into our conversations with our sellers. At any point in time, you're going to have that listing that you're like, shoot, I expected we were going to have 3 offers within the first 24 hours it was on the market. I was just, Saturday night, I was at a little block party at in my parents' neighborhood. And of course, somebody starts talking about real estate and you just strain to listen to what they're talking about. And this agent said, and my parents live in Deer Creek in a rural subdivision. And so it's not as high demand as Morton is, although it's 5 minutes from Morton. And this agent told them that we're going to list it on Thursday, we're going to have an open house on Saturday, we're going to review all offers at 1 o'clock on Sunday, it'll sell over list price, you'll get your pick of everything that you want. He was just talking it up. There were 20 people that he was talking it up how awesome this process was going to be. Guess what he's going to say if he doesn't get multiple offers? He's going to go back in 2 weeks to the next neighborhood block party and be like, well, my agent was wrong. My house, maybe it's still on the market. Maybe they priced it too high. Maybe they didn't get list price. But man, I just cringe to hear that agent set it up that way, because they didn't realize maybe that specific neighborhood is not likely to bring what they just promised.
Right.
And now they've set this incredible expectation that he has announced to everyone in the neighborhood. So somebody else that might be considering selling is like, oh yeah, this is what's going on in the market. When in reality,
remember, one of the goals of this conversation is to be able to lead your client effectively. And so you may want to go back to the old scripts that we used to have about, hey, this is how I'm going to market your house. I've got a house in my neighborhood, neighborhood just around the corner, has been on the market for 10 days. There's something going on, right, that's different. So we need to set those expectations about lead the client into it.
Yep. This I just thought was wildly interesting. I just wanted to share. So I looked up, this goes 1990 to 2022. So if you made $100,000 a year in 1990, you would have to make $221,200 today to have the equivalent of the same amount of income. That's an average, while it seems wild, that's an average of 3.8% inflation per year. If you look at the last 2 years, $100,000 in 2020 is the equivalent of $111,706 today. That's an inflation rate of 5.9%. So while it's like, oh, $11,000, that doesn't seem like a lot, that is a massive inflation rate compared to what we've experienced since 1990.
So don't forget, when they publish these inflation rates, 5.9% does not include gas or food. Guess what you're spending way more money than that on today. So again, when you look at the pricing, when you look at inflation's impact on somebody's pocketbook, which is gonna impact the demand on residential housing, they're spending money on gas and food plus that, which means between now and the end of the year, I can go spend $100 on a tank of gas today and not feel it. But I'll tell you what, by October, it starts to go, hey, wait a minute, I don't have as much money in my savings account as I had before. What am I going to do? And I promise you, by the end of the year, if this keeps up, there's going to be some different decisions made. So this is a caution for demand may decrease between now and the end of the year. That's the Fed's goal, by the way.
Every agent wants to know, what happens if rates go up 1%? What does that mean for my buyers? And this is, I use this example because I thought it was a great illustration. If you have a client that says, I can afford $1,025 in my monthly payment, that's all I can afford, then you look at interest rates at 4.35%, they would be looking at about a $206,000 house. At 5.35%, they're looking at a $183,600 house. So now we know that interest rates are not just going to go up 1%. What happens to that buying power when rates go up to 7 or 8%? So this is a great reminder that if you have buyers who haven't talked to their lender in the last 60 days, we know the Fed's going to increase rates this week. So if you have buyers that have pre-approval letters that are 60 days old, it's time to go back to those lenders and reevaluate, because that's a drastic difference. That's a $205,000 house versus a $183,000 house is a different house.
And it's a very tough thing for a buyer to go, oh yeah, 205, I'll just go spend 185. I don't have any buyers that are willing to step down in the ladder, right? Everybody's looking up. So what's going to happen to those buyers? They're going to get sidelined. You can see where this flattens the demand curve. If you're not really a motivated buyer, you may just step out of the market for a minute.
Or if you bought the new car and took the vacation and continued to go out to eat, and you didn't adjust your lifestyle for the last 6 months as things became incredibly expensive, you ate into that nest egg, and now you don't have the cash to put down to fill the gap either. So a lot of people are going to find out as interest rates go up and that savings got pinched, they're pushed out of the market. It's not even their choice.
All right, so we've been talking all about how this is going to impact the buyer and what that buyer demand is going to do. What about the agent, though? If I'm running an agent business and I know that this is on the map, what do my expenses look like right now, right? Because I haven't adjusted. I haven't felt it yet, right? I'm spending more money on gas today, but again, it's okay because I'm still selling houses and I'm still doing all this. But what would happen if 20% of my business went away between now and the end of the year? What expenses do I need to curb? You see, today is the time to go and plan that, right? While I still have money in my pocket, because once it becomes an emergency, it's
And
messy.
now is the time to look at all of your expenses, make sure that you're not paying for anything that you don't need, and then figure out what a 6-month reserve looks like. So that you have 6 months reserves all the time. In a shifting market, those reserves are imperative.
It's been so easy over the last couple of years to get away from any reserve, right? We can just go, oh, spend it because it's going to be good and we're not going to need it. Well, you know what? You don't need it until you need it.
And right now, given everything that we're looking at, we know the market's going to turn. And we can't sit here and say, all right, it's going to happen in August, or all right, it's going to happen next March. We know it's coming. And so now is the time to start looking at things like expenses and tightening that up and making sure you have reserves for when the market shifts. So let's look a little bit at what this means specifically for our buyer and seller clients, because obviously we know that if we don't have any leads coming in, we don't have anybody to transact with. So what does this mean for our buyers and sellers? First, let's look at, we're going to look at buyers first. So this was the first step in their buying process. When you have a consumer that says, okay, I want to buy a house, what is the first thing that they do? 41% of them go online and look at properties. That is a almost 10% increase from 2007, which you see companies like Zillow that are making it easier and easier and easier for the client to look at things online. Their whole goal in the last 2 years has been, how do we make the client process better? How do we make that experience better? They bought showing time. So now when you're looking at a property, you can click schedule a showing, and you can schedule a showing right there, and they connect you with an agent.
With the
because
Zillow
they know
agent,
that 41% of people are out looking before they connect with an agent. So if we can make the process easier, we know we'll capture more of those leads, because only 19% of them contacted a real estate agent.
Absolutely. And look how those two have changed over time, right? Contact a real estate agent, that's been pretty flat. But looked online for property, it's gone from 32 to 41%. I promise you, over the next 10 years, it's going to go faster than that, right? Because we all know it. That's where it's all going, and that's where the simplest source of information is.
Think about how you shop for things. If you're going to look for something if you're buying a car, and there was a car that you saw on the road and you went to Google it and it didn't have any kind of a good website, or there were no reviews on it, or you couldn't see a lot of pictures of it, the experience.
I don't go drive the dealer's lot anymore,
No.
right? I mean, I can get on every dealer's lot and see what their inventory is. I can go to GM's website and see exactly what their models are, exactly what the options are, and then I go search for the inventory on a dealer's lot. And I don't really care that they're down the street anymore. I'm happy to travel 200 miles.
Or
which is-
Carvana, you can have it delivered. Is that it?
even
Is
better,
that the one?
yeah.
They'll deliver it to
Yeah, even in the state of Illinois, now that they've cleaned up their stuff.
you. So you can see in all industries, people are looking online before they look anywhere. And so every big company is focused on the client experience. And however you can provide the best client experience, you're going to capture the lead. And so that's our mission, is how do we provide the best online experience to capture them when they're...
And how hard is it, right? I mean, take a close look at your own business and go, how hard is it to capture that online attention on a website as a search box, right? It's really, really tough. It's really tough to go and create another experience that's similar to those competitors. So
Your goal...
that's an uphill battle.
And your goal really is to be in one of those, to be in that 19%, to be one of the first people that your client contacts. Or if they are looking online, they're looking online in a way that connects them to you. They're on your app, they're on your website, because you've sent it to them so many times and you've posted it so many times that is an easy place for them to look.
Don't forget, right, this great market has covered up all of our sins, right? Buyers have been plentiful, and I haven't had to do anything for them. That changes as the market gets tougher, as demand tightens up, which we're talking about it's going to. We have to be way, way, way better at this. So get your attention on it today, right? Because in October, December, it's going to be panic mode.
It is. This next slide is where they actually found the home that they purchased. This was a little bit surprising to me. So in 2021, 51% of buyers found their own house online. Only 28% of them found it through their real estate agent. That means 51% of people called their agent and said, I want to see 123 Main Street. So that grew from 24% in 2006. So more than half of buyers found their own home online.
It's significant. This makes me question the value proposition that we have of it as agents, right? It's been pretty easy in these last couple of years because actually clients need us to negotiate for them, right? When there's multiple offers, a buyer can't just go in and buy the house, right? Otherwise, they're going to miss out. So agents have a value proposition today that's about negotiating. In a slower market, what is it? It used to be just marketing, right? When the inventory, we had so much inventory, you needed a real estate agent to market for you. What's it going to be moving forward? What's your value proposition going to be moving forward, right? Because again, it's changing. It's not what you're doing today isn't going to work in a year.
And one of these slides is going to get into value propositions. But first,
Sorry, jumping out of you.
it's okay. That was my friendly way of saying.
I heard it.
So this, everybody wants to know how many people are buying and selling with an agent and how many people are buying and selling for sale by owner. So this is buyers. So 87% of buyers used a real estate agent last year. 5% bought for sale by owner. So that's actually increased 10% since 2005. 77% of buyers used an agent in 2005, and that's increased 10%. Now, I think partially that's because as a buyer, if you can't find what you're looking for and you can't get in an hour, you're out. So the need for an agent, I think, increased because of the speed of the market. You needed somebody that could get you in before the house sold.
Yeah.
And so I think as a buyer, it's really hard to transact in this market without an agent. What I want to point out on this graph is don't forget that 8% that went to a builder or a builder's agent. Now, the term builder's agent is not a client coming to me and saying, hey, I'm thinking new construction, can you connect me with a builder? Some builders have agents that they work exclusively with. This is saying that buyer either went directly to the builder or to the builder's agent. So if you have a client that can't find what they're looking for, if you haven't at least had the new construction talk, you're missing an opportunity because this would tell us that an increasing number of them will go direct to a builder.
So remember, this is a national statistic. When you look at this in terms of Central Illinois, every one of you knows 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 home builders. Probably very few of you are having conversations with them saying, hey, if I brought you a client, what would you do? Right? So, but if you can go out and build that relationship on the front end, 8% of the Central Illinois market represents about 1,600 units. Right? So this is not a small piece of the market. And it pays well, right? So I think builders will pay for those leads.
Yeah, I mean, you can hardly build a house for under $350,000, $400,000.
Correct.
I mean, so I think you have to keep in mind that if you wait to have the new construction conversation, you're just going to run the risk that your client's going to go figure it out, not because they mean to ditch you, but because they don't understand that you can be part of the process. So,
and again, your value proposition shows up because there are other forces out there that will say, oh, well, it's more expensive if you're going to bring a realtor.
Yep.
That's why you want to be on the front side of the conversation.
Yep.
And it's not true, by the way.
This chart shows how buyers found their agent. 47% of them were referred by a friend, neighbor, or relative. Only 13% of them used that agent previously to buy or sell a home. So 47% came by referral. So how you treat your current and past clients, do you keep in touch with them? Do you love on them? Do you follow up with them? Do you visit them every so often or send them a text or call them and check in? They're willing to send you referrals if they remember you, but remember 13% would use you to buy or sell again.
Yes.
So there's a good chance that they forget about you because we know that the average person knows what, like 8 agents?
So every agent sitting out there right now going, no, that's not me, but statistically it is you.
So that 47% doesn't mean they're referring the agent that they used.
Correct.
It just means they're referring an agent who maybe they saw on social media or they see a lot of yard signs or whatever that may be. But it's the agent that stayed top of mind to them.
The risk of the market being so good in the last couple of years and how busy we've been running around, we may have stopped taking care of all those previous buyers and sellers, right? So it's not too late. Again, now is the time. This is our chance to go lead these people again and say, Here's what's real.
Yep. The good news for all of us is if we can get in the door and get the appointment, 73% of them are going to hire us. So they're not interviewing a lot of agents. So the key is to stay top of mind and get the appointment, because chances are 73% you're going to get the buyer. So
Yeah.
that's a good reminder that as long as you can stay in front of people, they're fairly loyal.
And shoot, you get to go into that meeting with confidence, right? If I know I'm the one going in, it's mine to lose.
Yes. One of the last things we're going to talk about with buyers is what's important to them. 20% said the most important thing to them is that my agent is honest and trustworthy. I think that goes pretty across the board, that that's part of building the relationship, is they need to feel like you are going to do what's best for them, that you have their back, you are their advocate. So building that relationship with them is really important. That's why some of the bought leads right now are really hard, because you're buying Zillow or Realtor.com leads and you're not out showing them a bunch of houses. You may show them one, and then there's nothing else they want to see for 2 or 3 weeks. It's really hard to build that relationship and that feeling of honesty and trustworthiness when you can only get in front of them once for a 15-minute showing. Then they just go on to the next. Mm-hmm. So that's part of why purchase leads are hard right now. The second thing that they said was most important was experience. And this is not the number of years you've been in the business. This is the experience they had of being your client. Did you answer the phone when you said you would? Did you send things in a timely manner? Did you get them a closing gift? Did you market their, well, this is for buyers. Go ahead.
Every industry is working on the customer experience, right? You know it from Starbucks, you know it from Ritz-Carlton, you know it from Chick-fil-A, for sure. Well, who won the COVID wars? We all know Chick-fil-A did. Why? Because they created a better drive-through experience than any other company, hands down. Mm-hmm. So what's the important thing about the experience? Have you sat down and crafted your customer's experience from their first interaction? Remember, it's probably online. From their first interaction to the closing, or even a year beyond the closing.
This is really not optional anymore, because you look at yourself across the board, and you look at anything from fast food to how you buy a car to your doctor to all of that. You know, now I can get all of my medical records on an app on my phone, and if my doctor decided to disconnect from that system and I didn't have that, I'm changing doctors. So you have to look at that across the board, that everybody expects that experience. They expect information at their fingertips all the time. They expect that personal relationship. And so if that's something that you're not built to provide right now, in a shifting market, that's where you're going to lose, because people are going to go to the agent that provides that experience.
Yeah.
Now let's shift to sellers. Sellers operate a tad bit differently. So sellers look for, sellers, 39% of them were referred by a friend, neighbor, or relative. So not quite as high as what our buyers were, but still, they're looking for referrals. 29% used the agent that they had previously to buy or sell. So that number is higher. So sellers are supposed to be a little bit easier for us. However, they're still heavily referrals. So if your listings are not coming from past clients, maybe we're not asking for referrals, or maybe we're losing touch. So it's still, selling your home is a little bit more overwhelming than buying a home. So when you talk about selling, pricing it, marketing it, things like that are a little bit more challenging, which is why that number 2 is a little bit higher. But still, we look at this market and say, well, for sale by owner should be easy in this market. We look at it like that. However,
I think this also points to maintaining that customer relationship. So when during that first year, when you're able to go back to them and ask them, do you know anybody else that's looking to buy, sell, or invest in the near future? That's where your business is coming from. As the market tightens up, that still is your best lead source. If you're not hearing the database word in this conversation, right, we're missing it, right? So I'll just go ahead and say it, that, hey, this is your database right now that we're talking about.
And 82% of sellers hired the first agent that came to their house. So I would say, when agents always ask, do you want to be the first one or the last one at a listing appointment? I would say be the first one in the
Be
door.
the first
and take
one.
your paperwork with you, because there's an 82% chance they're going to hire you.
That's a
Even in
big
this
deal.
competitive market, 2021, even in that competitive market in 2021, 82% hire the first agent through the door.
And remember, that's your customer experience. So if you haven't been through that listing presentation and practiced it and rehearsed it with somebody else that can give you feedback about what was the experience like, you might be missing out.
And this needs to be a system. So every time you have a listing appointment, whether it is your sister or somebody that you've never met, that experience should be the same. Because if you give your sister a different experience than you give somebody that you've never met, how likely is your sister to go send you a referral? Every client should go through the same system and the same experience, because you're not just doing it for that transaction, you're doing it for the one that they send to you after that.
Yep.
This is what sellers want from their agent. So why do people use an agent? 1 and 2, I think, are obviously the most important. Help them price the home. So pricing in this market is more challenging than it's ever been, because they're looking at their neighbors' houses and what they sold for, and pricing something competitively is really hard for people that are not in the market. And helping sellers market their home. So right now, they want multiple offers. They want to go as high as they can. So they want all the exposure, they want all the offers. So finding that balance of pricing it so that you draw all of that attention, helping them market it, that's why people are leaning toward agents, because in this market especially, those are 2 things that are really hard for consumers to do.
And again, one of the reasons that we left this information out there, right? Price your home competitively. Having this economic data is going to help you in the future as you get into pricing conversations, because I promise you, prices are going to tighten up, already are.
I remember in a team meeting sometime in the last year or so, we got into, how do you decide how much over the comps to list the house? And I don't remember who it was. One agent was like, I just go at least 10 or 15,000 over. I don't know. It's working. We're not in that market anymore. And so
Correct.
part of that competitive pricing is understanding which neighborhoods have already shifted and the demand has gone down a little bit, and you just need to price it at the comps.
Yep.
Or maybe a little bit below so that you drum up some excitement.
Yep.
But our pricing strategies have changed, and 21% of them are saying that's the most important thing to them.
And I really believe it will continue to be.
And if these are not 2 things that you hit on in every single listing presentation, take that away from this call. Those are the 2 things that you need to make sure you explain in a listing presentation, is why you do that better than
How am I
anyone
going
else.
to price it and find the most number of potential buyers to come in and make an offer?
The most important factor for sellers is a little bit different. Reputation was most important to them. So if you're also not bragging on yourself a little bit in your listing presentations and telling them maybe what your average days on market are, or how many houses have you sold in that neighborhood, or
Even
how
in your
many-
marketing package.
Yeah, all of that. You need to brag on yourself a little bit. Sometimes I think as realtors, we're a little bit hesitant to talk ourselves up, but that's what sellers want to know. They want to know why you know what you're doing. And then number 2 is that you're honest and trustworthy. So building that relationship and bragging on yourself, those are the 2 most important things to do when you're in your listing presentation. Or even on the phone with a potential seller. Okay, sellers, 74% of them say they would definitely use their agent again. 15% say probably, 6% say probably not, 5% say definitely not. So 74% say that they would definitely use them, and then 39% said that they did.
And I would argue,
that-
well, it's even broken down to that 89%. It's 89% most likely would use you again,
Yep,
if you don't turn out to be an idiot over the next 12 months,
right.
which means we need
So
to stay in communication.
Right, and the reason that only 39% of them actually are is because most of us, not most, some of us, ghost them after closing and we don't talk to them again. And then 2 years later, you're driving past their house and you see a sign in the yard from another agent. And you're like, what the heck? Why didn't they call me? Well, have you talked to them in the last couple of years? So as the market shifts and it gets more challenging, those are the things that you want to lean into, is those past clients and those referrals. 90% of them said that they sold their home using an agent or a broker. 7% went for sale by owner. So I've heard a lot of agents say, man, for sale by owners are just really hard to convert right now. And it seems like there's a lot of for sale by owners. There's actually less than there's ever been with the same number as 2018. And I think that could continue. I think that selling your house yourself in a shifting market is equally as challenging as selling it in this crazy market that we have. So
Yeah.
still, I think we're going to see this number hold steady. So what does all this mean?
Well, if you hadn't heard it, right, I mean, the prediction business is a terrifying one, right? Because I don't know any better than you do. But when we take all of this data and put it together, I think there's no question that we're going to see some change in the demand for residential homes, right? No question. So what does that mean to you for pricing? It means that our prices are probably going to stabilize. Every indicator that we have says the prices will stabilize. Doesn't mean they're going to go down. It means they're going to stop going up by such a wide margin. Does affect how we list our properties, and it does affect the offers that you write, right? So now is the time to begin working back on that scripting on what's the conversation with my buyer or seller in order to get them to that optimum spot.
And start paying attention. I'll be honest with you, this conversation of what's going on, all the stats and all the politics and the economists and all that, I don't love all of that. BJ geeks out on all the stats. It's not necessarily my thing. But I know that right now, more than ever, this is a time I have to educate myself and I have to be able to have this conversation. So if this is not something that you particularly enjoy, spend the time, read a little bit more, listen to a podcast, come talk to BJ or I. We will help you with this in any way that we can, but this is not a time to walk away from it, because the more you tune in to the things that are going on, especially in Central Illinois with employment and population, and that's how you are going to know when the shift happens before everybody else.
If this can be about awareness, right? I'm hopeful that this conversation opened up some gap that you see in your business, right? Because it's that gap that you get to go work on and figure out how to accelerate and move through it. That doesn't happen without resources. It's what book are you going to read? Who are you going to talk to? Who do you need to surround yourself with in order to get to the next level?
And if you hear this database word and go, I haven't done it. I don't even know where to start. Call us. We'll take 30 minutes. We'll sit down and we'll help you get started with one thing. Not running a database is not an option anymore. There are as many agents in pre-license class right now as there are licensed agents. So if you don't think our world is about to get way more competitive, you're wrong. There's another generation of young, hungry realtors that are coming up that are they don't have any bad habits. They're going to embrace technology and they're going to do things that you haven't been willing to do. And so take the time now and learn it little by little. Start implementing a system, start implementing technology, start doing something that you've been kicking around for the last 2 years, because it's just not an option to not do it anymore, but it doesn't mean you have to go get TikTok famous.
Today it's easy, and today you have time.
Yep.
I promise in December or January it's going to be an emergency, and that's not going to be fun.
If you wait till the market shifts, you're too late.
It's done.
Right now, the market hasn't shifted yet. Do it now. So if we can help you in any way, let us know.
I hope it helps.
All right, that's all we got. Any questions or anything you want to ask us?
Yeah, we have not been paying any attention to the comments or anything, so
I've been watching them.
thanks for coming.
Yeah.
And please reach out if you have ongoing questions or you want some additional information about any of the data.
All right, thanks for being with us. Have a great day.
Do good things.